1, 2, 3.
Ooh, I'm so excited about this one.
Okay. Well, Delon. All right. If you had to guess, okay, Delon, if you had to guess, what would you say is my favorite memory of you and I?
Your favorite memory.
Yes.
Ooh, that's hard. I mean, we've been friends for like 20 years. My
Yeah,
favorite
it was a
memory.
lot.
God. I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to
Okay,
start.
I will give you a hint. The hint is Jerry's class.
Girl, yes.
Okay.
Wait, that is the memory. That is the exact
Okay.
memory.
Okay. I know people listening are like, what is wrong with them? Okay. So let's just paint the picture. This was our sophomore year of college. We were in movement class, which let's just talk about how stupid that class was.
Oh God, don't get me started. I mean, Jerry's dead. like
Oh, R.I.P.
like
Jerry.
R.I.P. Jerry Schweibert, like totally
R.I.P. Jerry. If
passed.
you were here, I would tell you to your fucking face that class was bullshit.
She would. She's just shitting
But
on the
for
dead.
anyone that doesn't, because okay, we went to acting school together. I think the average person's not going to know what movement class is. Like
Well,
what?
yeah, I mean, you're right. It was a dumb class. I mean, especially that class, partially
Mhm.
because of Jerry and his teaching style. The goal of the class was to teach you how to use your body as an actor in space. And you're
Mhm.
basically, in that class specifically, we're paying thousands of dollars basically to learn Tai Chi, which
We
was
were like crawling around on the floor and shit. It was,
ridiculous.
I truly have yet to use anything in that class on an acting job, but I digress. So you and I were in movement. And I remember, I don't know what we were doing, but I was laying on the floor, pelvis up like I was at the gyno. And we were just cracking up because we were trying to sing that Janet Jackson song from The Nutty Professor.
The only nutty. What words is she singing? Nobody
No
knows.
one, no one knows what that bitch is saying. Not that bitch. Let's not call it. Let me
Okay,
not
girl,
call.
because they will come for you.
They will
Because
come for
listen,
me. No, I was gonna say bitch in like a friendly way, but Miss Jackson, no one knows what she is saying in that song.
and huge fans, but
Huge fans, but that is why it was so funny. And I honestly, I felt like I was on drugs. We were laughing so freaking hard in that class.
and like disrupting the whole damn class. Thank
Oh,
you, Miss Jackson. I'm
everyone
for
was like,
real.
"Excuse me, I'm trying to do my pelvic lifts in this class." We were just cracking up.
So funny. Ooh, wait. No.
Listen, listen,
Listen.
listen. Wait.
I hate you for that.
Let me fix it.
Well, welcome back to Let Me Fix It, the podcast where we reminisce about the college education we still haven't paid for. I'm DeLon Grant.
Oh, and I'm Franchesca Ramsey. And today's trip down memory lane was brought to you by the University of Michigan, where Delon and I famously met while we were both in acting school way back in 2000. 2002.
Where the hell has the time gone though? I truly had no idea though at the time, my little 18-year-old brain, that the University of Michigan like had such a reputation until I was there, and obviously since graduating. But like Francesca, your mom was a U of M alum, right?
That is correct. My mother is the reason that I applied. She was a proud alumni. Also, very cool. My mother and I both lived in the same dormitory.
Did you really?
Yes, my mother was on North Campus. I was in North Campus in Bursley Hall. But in addition to Lerna, myself, and you, there are a lot of really successful alumni from University of Michigan.
I know Darren Chris is someone from our era that like immediately comes to mind, right?
Yes, Darren. People might know him from Glee. He also has a Golden Globe
Oh
from.
shit, he does. Yo,
Yeah,
snaps to you, Darren. I forgot about
I
that.
know Darren is clearly listening. He is very successful. If you've watched the other two on HBO Max, Helena, is it Helena or Helena York?
Helena York.
Helena York is another alum. We also have the mega famous James Earl Jones, Selma Blair, Lucy Liu, David Allen Greer.
Michael Phelps, he was there when we were there.
He was?
He was. That's when he was winning all of his like gold medals, is
Oh,
when
I
he was like
had
at U of M.
you know I don't do sports, but
Oh, girl, tell me
shout
about it.
out to you, Michael Phelps, eating those 9,000 calorie meals.
Okay. Also, never saw him on campus. So did he go? Question mark. I don't know.
Right.
Also Francesca Ramsey. Yo, let's
Ugh.
talk about it. Like,
Ugh.
in all these years since we've met, 20 fucking 1 years.
Oh
Do the
my
math.
God.
Count
Yeah.
it, count it. It's crazy. I have to say, yo, we've done really well for
Hmm, hmm.
ourselves. You've been all over TV as an actor and a writer, Superstore, iCarly, MTV, Comedy Central, and he's been on Broadway, and by he I mean me.
Yes, we got to do that third person. He's a working actor, and you have a whole ass master's in musical theater, and you've
Sure
been
do.
on many a national tour.
Mhm.
We're doing quite well for ourselves, right?
We would, and who could forget the hit podcast?
Hell yeah, you
Come
better say it in
on.
present tense.
That's right. Everyone has a podcast. So for today's episode, we thought it'd be fun to revisit our past and what we learned in acting school, our acting days, and how we, fix it, our fucking podcast, how we improve the program if we could. Let me do that again.
Do your little clicker.
Hmm. So we thought it would be fun for today's episode to revisit our past and what we learned in our acting school days and how we would make the program better if given a chance.
So let's dive in. Acting school. Let me fix it.
Okay. If you'll indulge me, just a little bit of a contextual history lesson here. I'm an acting nerd. I love the craft.
Hmm.
If you're talking about acting school, theater training, it's important that we talk about its origins. So, Fran, do you have any idea who created the modern version of acting school?
Ooh, okay. I definitely took theater history, so I should know this. But the only name that I can think of is Uta Hagen. I don't remember
Mm.
what she did or who she was, but I just loved like Uta. It sounds like
Ooda, ooda,
she
ooda,
should be in
ooda, rocking
Uda. It
everywhere.
sounds like she should be in like a cipher, like in a rap battle or something. I don't know what she did. She was definitely a white woman, but
To me, Uda Hagen sounds like a German dish that you eat. Uda
yes, pass the
Hagen.
Uda. I'll do a small order of Uda Hagen. Yeah, it does.
Uda Hagen. She was a famous actress, Uda Hagen, and an even more famous teacher. Shout out to Deborah Headwall, one of my acting teachers, who was one of her students. But
Mm.
I'm talking about like the modern godfather of acting training.
Yeah, I don't know.
Konstantin Stanislavski. Can I say it? Konstantin Stanislavski is credited with creating the acting school we know. So, who was Stanislavski? He was this Russian performer director who lived from the end of the 19th century to the beginning of the 20th century. And none of us would have studied the technique of acting that we do without him and his work. He was the first notable practitioner to push for the psychological realism and natural
Mm.
acting that we see actors on TV and theater, film using today.
Okay. Okay. So he is essentially the man responsible for mumblecore. Whenever the girls are me, I put those captions on. I don't know what y'all are saying, but it's natural.
I feel like if he came back from the dead, he'd be like, "What the fuck is happening?
What are y'all saying?
What are you saying?" I mean, also he was Russian, so what?
Yeah.
Before film and TV were even a thing, right? The only way you consumed entertainment was via theater, but those shows they were two-dimensional, vaudeville, song and dance variety shows. Either that, or they were like extremely predictable, formulaic melodramas, right? You
Yeah.
were a hero or a villain or a damsel or a matron, but Stanislavski, he ushered in the system that focused on like the in-depth exploration of a character's psyche. Yo, I love this shit. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Mm.
He also pioneered the use of theater and rehearsal studios as laboratories used to innovate the actor training, aka the first modern acting school. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow, you are a theater nerd. He's an
Yo,
actor.
hire a motherfucker to teach you to teach your university.
uh,
History lesson over.
okay, so my question for you is how did you end up at the University of Michigan's acting program? Was that your top school? Did you audition anywhere else? I know you were doing acting in high school, but like give us like the give us the backstory.
Yeah, I come from a relatively small town in northern Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota. And it's so funny. I remember coming home from college and me saying to my mom, I'm applying to college. And she was like, oh, oh, yeah, you should do that. My mom didn't go to college. Like a lot of my cousins didn't go to college. I'm one of few that did. So there were guidance counselors and teachers that kind of guided me on the way. I didn't even know that you could study theater as a major.
Wow.
But there's always a teacher, right? Liz Larson was my theater teacher in high school. She was a mentor. She became a second mom. She held my hand throughout the entire experience. There's always a teacher, I mean, at the heart of stories like mine, but for all of us. So I didn't know where I was going to apply. I only applied to 3 schools, one in
Oh,
Chicago, Wisconsin, and one in Michigan, all in the Midwest. I got accepted to this small school in Wisconsin, and they gave me a really big scholarship. So I was like, okay, that's where I'm going. But I still had my U of M audition set up. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go anyway. Who knows? Um, and when I went to the campus and for the audition, I looked around and I was like, oh my, it's just so beautiful. Do you remember that?
yeah. It's like
It's stunning.
it's like the college that you see when you watch like a movie, like a coming
Yes.
of age story. It's like the quad and the leaves are
The
changing colors,
leaves.
and it's like,
Yes.
yeah, it's
It's
very
like you
pretty.
remember when we went on the sidebar, remember we went on that first Mexican vacation to Cancun and like
Mhm.
we couldn't take a bad picture and the
Yeah.
resort was like
Even though the
janky.
resort was a shithole.
Yeah, it's that like you could not take a bad picture of it. So
Mhm.
quickly after the audition, U of M became my top school. And I wanted to get out of my hometown so bad, and I went to Ann Arbor and I was like, look at all these black people, look at all these gay
That's
people. It
true.
was like more than I'd ever experienced. I grew up in a very white place, so I was ready.
That's
um
so interesting. I
yeah how,
honestly, I didn't know any of that stuff.
yeah, no, I was like, it was my top, it became my top school really, really quickly. But not for you, huh? How did you end up there?
Yeah, so I went to performing arts middle and high school. I knew I wanted to do acting like from a really young age, and our school was all about like you are going to college for acting. Like it was
Mhm.
very much driven into us. And there are a lot of notable alumni from my school. Probably the most famous is Eric Andre, the comedian. But the young man that was on oh my god, wait, what is I can't remember the name of that show. Modern Family. He played like the boyfriend of the daughter in Modern Family.
Okay.
To Dreyfus. There's a bunch of working actors that went to my high school. So it was very much like you're going to college for acting. And so we went to Chicago, I think my senior year, and we auditioned for a bunch of acting schools in Chicago. It was
Mm.
super fun. My mom actually went on the trip as a chaperone, and we went to the Jerry Springer show, which was hilarious.
No.
Yes,
I, wait, you were auditioning for theater school and they took you to the Jerry Springer
yeah,
show?
so like you go to like this, it was at like a hotel or a convention center or something, and that you could
Or
audition
like
for all of,
unifieds?
yeah,
Yeah.
you could audition for a bunch of colleges. And so we were doing a bunch of like, sightseeing, and there was also Jerry Springer, and my mom went with us. I'll never forget. My mom was so embarrassed to be there that she sat like right under the camera operator so she wouldn't be on camera. She was like, this is the spot. You're not going to catch me slipping. We had a really great time. We also snuck alcohol into our hotel and got wasted. Sorry, mom.
Oh my
there are
God.
there are definitely pictures of me puking in a hallway with all of my classmates laughing at me.
Meanwhile,
Um,
she like has a monologue to do tomorrow. What?
I honestly just unhinged in hindsight. And U of M was not my top choice. I really wanted to go to Carolina School of the Arts. I had gone to their summer acting program, but I didn't get in. And I also auditioned for Marymount Manhattan. I think I also auditioned for FSU. So I knew I wanted to go to acting school, but Michigan gave me a scholarship.
Yo,
And that's just go where the money is. So that's where I was at.
I heard you. I heard you. They gave me a little one too, but not that much. But before we dig into all of the machinations of our acting school experience, let's take a tiny break and we'll be right back. And we're back. So we both had acting experience before we got to college. But it was still a bit of a culture shock, right? Like going from being like the big fish in your small pond, the
Mhm.
best actor, to starting all over from square one. So I mean, you went to North Carolina School of the Arts for a summer camp. You had a performing arts high school. Did you feel like you were fully prepared to go to acting school?
Oh yeah. I had a massive chip on my shoulder. I was
No.
like, I don't need to be here. Like, not that I don't need to be here, but like when you're in school and your teacher is kind of like laying the foundation, because there were people in our class who had never, not that they'd never done acting, but they were going to schools where maybe they didn't have like a extreme acting focus.
Yeah,
Just like
me.
yeah, just like more natural raw talent. And oh man, I mean, we will get into this, but like Francesca was not kind.
She was
She was.
spicy. She was spicy. And I mean, listen, it's and like you would bite into the sausage and you'd be like, oh wait, there's still a bone in there. That's what I mean by
You
spicy.
know what it was? It was insecurity, plain
Totally,
and
one
simple.
thousand percent.
But I really, we would be in class and I just was having this feeling of like, I know this stuff. Like I went to acting school. Like I studied in middle and high school. Like I know all this stuff. And I felt frustrated by just some of the like rudimentary things. I mean,
It's redundant.
crawling around on the ground, right? I was like,
Yeah,
why the fuck are we doing this?
yeah.
What about you? Did you feel prepared for acting school?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had like my theater teacher in high school was a professional actor for a long time. So like there was I felt like we were pushed very hard in high school, but I got there and I just felt like a no.
Really?
Well, I just felt insecure in a lot of ways, and the way my insecurity manifested itself was like to crawl inside myself.
Yeah.
I will also say this, like I just didn't know what I was doing. I thought when we were going to acting school, it was like for all of theater. I didn't even realize that musical theater and acting
Oh,
were
we're
two
two
different
different
things.
things.
So when I got there and I looked at the curriculum, I was like, "Where's the dancing? Where's the singing?"
It's
And they
so
were like, "That's a
interesting.
different program."
Yeah, well, and also like, oh, man, when we were in school, and they were called the MTs.
Oh God,
It
right?
was it was a
The elitism.
it was such elitism, and so I'm sure that that was also kind of jarring for you to think like, oh, we're all in this together, High School Musical 3, and then
Totally.
you get there and it's like, we're the musical theater kids and you're the actors. You stand over there, we're over here. Like it was very divisive.
It was very, I don't understand why and their program still to this day
Hmm.
is such a well-known famed program in
Yeah.
terms of training musical theater actors and performers, but it felt so weird to have a strong divide. um
Yeah. And what was so interesting is our class, so our freshman class was considered big, which is so interesting because there was like what, 20 kids in it. And
22.
everyone was like, your class is ginormous. 22 students is not big.
You know, I'll say this though. Compared to our upperclassmen, we were the bigger class. But when we talked about me going to grad school. When I found out that the average class at the Boston Conservatory was 60 students, three, it every year has 60 fucking students. I was like, wait, what? Talk about a cash cow. Don't get me started on my
Yeah.
grad school experience.
Yeah.
But like that was crazy. So comparatively, no, not huge, but 20 students, 22
But also
students is not a
y'all,
lot of
but this
kids.
is the other thing is y'all chose 22 students to be
Thank
here. So
you.
why are you acting like surprised like, "Oh my god, there's so many of you here."
We didn't
Yeah,
know all
bitch,
you would come.
you gave us all opportunities to be here.
Right. The
Um
interesting thing though is that like our class, like I guess dynamic in terms of
mhm.
it was, I mean, there were a lot of gay kids, because there always are. But I tried to think about like, was it diverse? And
No.
who I was like, it was Courtney,
Courtney. That
me,
was
Fran, and Courtney.
Oh,
That was
and then
it.
there was another girl who came later, another black girl who came like sophomore
Oh,
year.
Malika.
Malika. Yeah. So that was it. And then everybody was white. Like
And Raina White, who is currently on Broadway, she was kind of a BFA, but lower than
she
us,
was
but I
in
don't know that
musical
she's in our
theater
class.
though, right?
She auditioned. It's so crazy. That woman's voice is unreal. I would hear her walk by her dorm and hear her singing, and no, they rejected her. They didn't accept
Okay,
her.
so okay, this is a perfect segue. One of the things that blows my mind to this day about acting school is the people that everybody thought were the stars in acting school aren't acting anymore. The
Talk about
people
it.
who could not book a role are the ones on fucking TV, with the exception of one or two people.
Me,
There are a few people.
I'm not on TV.
There's like you, Beth, Maureen.
Right,
There's a
right.
few people that you were like, oh, that person's a star. But then there were other people who, again, Raina is a great example, super talented. Darren Chris was not in musical theater, but people
No,
know him because of Glee as a musical theater kid.
yeah.
But he could not get into musical theater. I mean, it's just a reminder that you're in this bubble, you're in this microcosm when you're in
Mm.
acting school, and dare I say any artistic program. that's not a real reflection of the industry
It's so
at
true.
large. But in the moment, I mean, man, it was just so cutthroat.
Well, and I have
Um,
a theory that like those people who didn't get cast, because that was always a big thing. You didn't get
mhm.
cast in shows, and that was like a measure of your value for the department or as an actor or a performer. Those people had to work hard at
Yeah.
school, and then they got out and they were still working that hard. They were just bulldogs,
They weren't sitting, they weren't resting on their laurels. They weren't like,
Exactly.
yeah, I'm the big dog.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I agree with that. Let's talk about our freshman year. I kind of hinted at it, but would you describe us as friends freshman year?
Silence.
I was like, is he frozen?
Friends, just to cut Francesca out of the conversation with, we were not friends. But I did not like you. It's just that Fran is, to this day, I'm literally not even talking to you anymore. Fran is, to this day, one of the funniest people I know, one of the smartest, one of the quickest people I know. She's so that is a, along with like your level of
Can be a
insecurity,
recipe
was
for
like,
bitchery.
it was a recipe for bitchery. It was
Yeah,
like you just could cut somebody down so quick. And I was like,
yeah.
I'm just gonna stand clear of her. I'll like be nice, but like I'm not gonna like try to hang out because I don't wanna, me and my insecurity being like, ooh, don't make fun of me. Don't like,
Yeah, I will admit wholeheartedly, I came in my freshman year, and a friend of ours who I'm friends with to this day, she and I really latched onto each other. And you know how sometimes when you meet somebody and you can kind of like feed each other's ego in
totally.
a negative way. I think we were both just really insecure, and we kind of were very clicky, and we were just like, we're the cool kids and everyone else is not cool. And
Mhm.
um it
It's
definitely
safety.
it was definitely a safety measure. And it's so funny because I remember that part of myself, but at the same time, freshman year is kind of hazy in that
Mm,
you and I were in classes together, but like I don't remember us talking
at all.
or hanging out. Like I don't remember us like really interacting at all freshman year.
I know, and I mean, it's the safety thing, right? I had another friend of ours, Michaela, and I were got really close, and so that was she was my like little person that I could hang on to, both Minnesotans, and but obviously that evolves and changes because here we are 20 years later. You're my
Yeah.
best friend in the world, blah blah blah.
Yeah. So
One of
what
the
were some of the classes that because we mentioned movement,
right.
and I think it's always interesting to talk about these classes for people who've never studied acting because they sound like made up almost because
Well,
they're
and you're like,
so all over the place.
what does that entail, right? So the movement class, obviously how your body moves in space, but there's also voice class, which isn't singing voice, it's speaking voice.
Mhm.
And to your point about crawling around on the floor, I remember one of the first things thinking like, yo, I'm paying 38,000 fucking dollars, and I'm laying on the full floor pretending to be bacon. I remember one of
Mhm.
our first acting classes, voice class was the same fucking thing for me. I remember freshman year, I was like, why I'm over here jiggling my ass and
Yeah.
screaming. But
Mhm.
then fast forward to my junior year when I like had a big role and I was doing warm-ups and stuff. And now I'm like, fucking give me the acting training, give
And
me
you're
the
doing
class.
all of
Yeah, yeah.
the jiggling.
And it just made sense. It like clicked. But my
Mhm.
18-year-old self couldn't get for 2 years, honestly, for the first 2 years, I was like, why am I still fucking oh and like yawning and
And
screaming?
like and like holding your belly and like shaking. I just remember I remember there was a moment in voice class where we were like crouching down, and Annette Masson, RIP, was
Gosh,
telling
all of our
us,
professors have passed.
I
Wow.
mean, look, we're getting up there. She was telling us to like breathe out and like squeeze our like butt. And somebody farted. I'm
Obviously.
sorry, I'm a 12-year-old. I was dying.
It's too
You
much
don't remember?
pressure. I do. I do. And listen, it was probably me because I remember you weren't there for a senior year, but we had a clown class. It was right after lunch, and my clown farted every day, and it became an ongoing
That
joke.
was your
I
clown
digress.
trait. Well, that is a good segue. We definitely had clown class, where like each person had to have like a trait, and you had to like it was
It
you were
was
doing it was just
one.
ugh.
That was one of the hardest classes I've ever had to take, and actually, I will say this: it taught me that comedy is not about being funny. Comedy,
Less is
in
more.
terms of acting, comedy is about commitment. I mean,
Yeah.
you are a comedy writer, so you're looking for a pun, you're looking for a
Yes.
punchline. But in terms of like an actor, like don't try to be funny. Just like commit to fucking what you're doing,
Yeah.
and the shit will be funny.
One of my favorite classes was stage combat. We definitely like
Hmm.
learned how to fight, which was really cool. And
What was your favorite weapon to fight with?
ooh, I really liked, I guess it was like a baton of some
Oh, the
sort.
quarterstaff,
Yeah. I felt like I was in like a fucking, I don't know, Lord of the Rings or something.
like a Star Wars, like
Like
ha
I
ha
needed some
ha.
elf ears or something. You know what I mean? It was just
Get
so
out of here, Liv
cool.
Tyler.
Yes, please put me in a film where I can fight with a stick. So I love stage combat, but like you also kind of had to do some like pantomime things in there, like hand to hand stuff was
Hand
really
to hand
fun.
was really masking like the sound of a punch, the sound of a slap was
Oh
so
yeah, where
cool.
you like hit your chest at the same time that you throw a punch.
Yeah, it's I forget what that's called. It's not sleight of hand, but it's like I guess it's just masking. There's another name for it, but like
Yeah.
so the audience doesn't see you hit your own body.
Oh yeah, that was so fun because especially to your earlier point about, comedy and acting being reacting. I loved like being able to act as if you'd been punched, where you're like, ah, oh, ah, and you like pretend like drool is or blood's coming off of your face and like,
Yeah, the best part is like when you hit and like you grab your face and then you come back and look at the other person dramatically, like, what the fuck do you do
like
to me?
how dare you
Here I
fucking,
come.
I knew you were gonna punch me, but I'm still so offended.
Right. One of the things that I do have a distinct memory about with our scene study acting class our freshman
Hmm.
year was that like, not to go into your whole psyche, you had like a really hard time with one of the
Oh
exercises.
yeah.
Because it was all about like accessing things, but like some of it I will say did go a little too far.
It felt exploitative. For me, acting was always about having fun and inventing characters and like immersing yourself into this different world. And I remember in our scene study class, our teacher had us like telling personal stories. And I don't remember what the prompt was, but it was something along the lines of like, tell a time that was like really difficult for you. And people were revealing some really intimate shit in there, and I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. Like people were crying, and in the interest of privacy, we're not going to go into things people were sharing, but it was stuff that you needed to share with a therapist
That's what
and
I'm
not
saying.
and not with your acting class. So when it was my turn, I was like, my life's been great. I'm not.
This is one of the things, again, I say this all the time. I will sing your praises till we are dead and gone. But like you have had a sense of self, and I mean we're all insecure, all that stuff. You have had a sense of self from a very young age. And I do remember this moment you were like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm
No.
not doing that.
No. And here's the thing, I had stuff I could have shared, but to your point, I didn't feel like anybody was owed access, especially
Yes.
like we didn't really know each other like that. And again, I will never forget some of the things people shared in that class. And then you would be doing a monologue and Daryl would be like, think about your cat dying. Like, no.
Also, you're right, because it's like being weaponized. Instead of me going home and figuring out how to access that stuff on my own, I've
Mhm.
now done it in public in like the trauma Olympics of it all, right?
Yeah.
And now everyone knows my shit, and then and then there's like just judgment around it, like, oh, you can't go there. I guess your cat dying wasn't good enough, right?
Right. And also, like, I would also add to that, if you and I are in a scene, one thing that I remember from acting school is this idea that your job is to make your scene partner look good. Like, it's not
Ready?
about me. Like, I'm there to service you. And if we're in a scene and I'm fucking thinking about my cat dying, I'm not in the scene. I'm not
Yo.
here with you anymore. I'm off reliving a moment to help me access tears. No, I want to embody this character and listen to what my scene partner is saying and think, oh, you're helping me get there because I feel the feelings, or whatever is happening.
And don't get me started, but like that work of like if you need to go access shit from your somebody dying, your cat, whatever, that is you work that you need to do over
Mm-hmm.
there. When we're
Mm-hmm.
on stage, when we're in a scene, I need you to be here doing what our characters are supposed to be doing. It's like you
Right.
said, it's always, don't give me my acting teacher hat on. It's always about the other person. You're
Yes.
always trying to get something from the other person. And if you're thinking about how do I cry, first of all, no real person actually wants to cry. We try to stop
No.
ourselves from crying.
And when you actually cry in real life, it's rarely because you're thinking about something else. You're
Thank
thinking
you.
about what's happening in the moment and it's bringing up that emotion for you.
Right. Um, to jump to one of my favorite classes, not theater history. Do you
Oh
remember that?
god. That
Talk
was
about
one of
a
that was
snooze.
probably one of the few classes that I came close to like maybe a C in, and I was really devastated over it. It's just a lot of like dates and names. And again, I definitely in hindsight feel like I had a block in terms of how I was approaching acting school, where I was
Mm,
having a lot of like, I don't understand why we're doing this. What does this have to
mm.
do with acting? Like, when do we get to the acting part? Like, when is the fun part?
Listen, always, always. That's what we're here for, right? The other stuff is just like a stepping stone to get me to where I want to be. But
Yeah.
even I think like they needed just a different approach to the theater history. It's like it's so fucking academic that like to
Yeah.
get a
It's
bunch of kids who
laborious.
totally to get a bunch of kids or people who really are like, yo, I just want to be, in rehearsal figuring it out. Like that's when if you want to do a Greek tragedy or talk about Greek drama, let's do a Greek tragedy and then incorporate theater history in that so that it like
Yeah.
it sticks with us.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely felt like learn all these names and dates, and then we're going to quiz you on it. And, or you're going to have to write a paper. And like, to your point about like the connective tissue to the work
Hmm.
that we ended up wanting to do wasn't really there. I will say one thing that I really loved is we had like what's called a wheel, where even though we were in the acting program, we also had to do costuming, and we also had to do
Hmm.
set design, and we also had to do lighting. And I think this is something that I wish was incorporated across all programs,
Hmm.
and dare I say in the workplace today,
Talk
because I
about it.
think you really need an appreciation of what other folks in the production or in your company are doing. And
Yes.
I always loved, I've always been crafty. I always loved costuming. I always loved set stuff, but it really gave you an appreciation for like, yo, these motherfuckers are working. Like this is hard work.
Well, and also like I also was granted work study because I grew up poor and like was on Pell Grants and all that kind of stuff. So I had to do work study, and it was just because we'd already done that wheel where I worked in the prop shop and the costume shop. Freshman year, I just stuck with the costumes because it just seemed like the lowest hanging fruit. And I worked in the costume shop all 4 years, and I now know how to sew. I have skills based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, an appreciation for what they do. So like in Broadway shows that I've been in and on tours or regional productions, I have a reverence for what costume people do and them washing my underwear and all of that kind of stuff because
Yeah.
I realize the hours that is put into it and also like the extent to which they go to make you feel comfortable in your
Yeah.
costumes,
And it's
right?
thankless, right? Like
100%.
people are watching the show and they're thinking, wow, he was so good. Sometimes they're thinking the costumes are amazing. But if the costumes are really good, it's almost like second fiddle to the acting, right? Where like
Yeah.
it immerses you in the world. You love it so
Hmm.
much. The sets are incredible. You're not going like, I wonder how they made that flat. No, you're just like, okay, now we're in a brothel. Now we're in the woods, whatever it is.
Right, and they're thinking about minute details.
Mhm.
So freshman year, we were both cast
We were.
in a show, and I mean, God, the story. I have such a story from the fucking show.
I
But
don't
tell
have
me,
any. I have no stories from this show. Like
who were you in
truly,
the show? Were you the
we
oh,
okay.
the
We
lady
were
with
in
the flowers?
we
Who
were
were
in
you?
Streetcar Named Desire, and I believe that I was a sex worker walking around with some flowers. I had no lines. And this also just speaks to the resentment I was feeling for this fucking program. Because I was like, I have to be at this rehearsal. I ain't got no lines. And I'm
Mm-mm.
just walking around in the background. And who were you? You had some lines.
Yeah, I think I mean, forgive. I think the character's name it's a Latino name. I think it might have been Pablo or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have lines. I remember in tech, this is the same acting teacher who made us share
Yes.
personal stories who problematic, but he was
And
directing
is probably
Streetcar.
dead.
Well, I hope not. I really hope not. I hope you're doing well out there, Daryl. Um,
I hope your little dreads are still hanging on by a thread. I hope Just listen. At some point, you gotta give it up.
Oh
At some,
my
at some point,
God.
at
It was
some point, if your dreads are in another time zone, you need to leave them alone.
wait, he had a 19 for a 19 head. The forehead was all the way back to the back of the cranium and had the dregs of a dreadlock. Oh my
Hmm.
God, so funny. Anyway, we're in tech, and tech rehearsal is where you set the costumes, you set the lights, and you just get on stage and you figure out what the actual after being in a rehearsal room, what the actual production is going to look like. We're in tech, and this director had given us at this card table contradictory direction, and I couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, I stopped the rehearsal. I didn't stop the rehearsal. I just asked a question. I was like, "Hey, Daryl, what is it? Is it this or is it that?"
Hmm.
Silence, no response. Didn't even answer me. Continued on, and then we get notes after, and he's handing out little post-it notes to everyone. And he doesn't. He hands me one and doesn't say anything, and then
Mm.
keeps going. What did the post-it note say? Don't ever talk to anyone like that in this business again. You will be blackballed.
What?
My yes,
First
my
of all,
eight.
you're like also the nicest person ever. I don't remember this, but I also know that you're not the type to be like, tell me what it is. Like you're like
I literally
you're the
was like,
most amenable person that I know.
I was like, raise the hand, ask the question. Oh my god, it scarred me. It scarred my little 18-year-old mind. And I was like, I can't. Gotta be. It was
I
him, not me. But you know.
I have a memory of him, and I don't remember if it was Streetcar or it was in our scene study, but I remember you were doing a scene and Daryl was like saying that he didn't believe you. And he said something like, pretend you're talking to your girlfriend. Do you remember this?
Oh no. Oh no. And everyone.
And everyone was like, "Ugh." He gay.
Also, have you seen him?
But no, but you know what? To your credit, and I think that this is speaks to your acting talent, but also maybe speaks to just like the homophobia inherent in the industry. You were
Mm,
always getting cast as a straight man,
I always
always.
was. Still
Yeah,
am. Still
yeah.
am.
Still
Thank
to
you.
this day, versatile takes on a new meaning.
Okay. I am verse. Hit me up in my DMs. Well, let's talk about sophomore year because we were in
Yes.
another play together
Mhm.
sophomore year.
Yes,
But
that is
you,
when our friendship was fully solidified.
yes,
And
yes.
dare I say, what's so interesting is that sophomore year is when I left Michigan and went to study graphic design. But I think sophomore year made the biggest imprint on me creatively and
Mm,
also gave me the most tangible relationships of my whole college experience. And I wasn't
mm,
even there the full year, which I think is really beautiful. We were cast in a performance art piece called After a Fashion, where we were essentially writing the show ourselves
hmm.
with a group of actors and this performance artist named Holly Hughes. And you and I I don't even know how we were paired together, but we started writing this series called The Black Reps. We were the representatives for the entire Black race.
Which is like funny in and of itself, a joke in and of itself that
Yes.
nobody kind of got. But
I
yeah,
mean, I mean, that was what was so funny is that there were only, I'm gonna say there was you, me, and Kevin. Were there any
that
other
was
Black people
it.
on the show? We're the
That
only
was
Black people
it.
on the show. And so we came up with this bit and we just, man, it was so beautiful because you and I have had such very different life experiences, but at the same time, such similar life experiences. And
Hmm.
it was really this like surreal moment of me telling you about growing up in West Palm Beach and going to Catholic school, and you telling me about growing up in Minnesota, and us being like, it's like looking in a mirror. Like, what's happening here?
Well, and we've talked about this for years, but it is one of the first times that I had that experience of being seen in that way. Because
Yeah.
growing up where I grew up, it's a very solitary experience, right? To be a Black kid and be in a very white place, and to have the same experiences that we then infused in Black reps, right?
Yeah.
It felt so freeing.
Yeah.
I felt like to your point about what it gave you as a writer, as a young person, it felt so free to be like, oh wait, I can talk about these things.
Yeah.
Oh, because someone else experienced them. They're not just in my head. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I feel less alone.
Yeah, and it was also one of these moments, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, as somebody who had gone to predominantly white schools, I never had the opportunity, I never felt safe enough to voice my discomfort, oftentimes
Mm,
being the only Black person in the room and knowing that things were being said to me that I didn't agree with, but I didn't really know how to verbalize like why I didn't like them or what they were. And I didn't want to call them racist, right?
right.
Because,
That's the
you
worst thing
know,
you can call anyone in
the
this country.
worst thing that you can say. And like these white people are my friends, and like, they don't really mean it. And so it was really we found such like beautiful camaraderie in the process of writing those sketches, and I will never forget,
Ooh.
this is probably oh,
Mm.
the Jerry's class moment is high on the list, but this one is probably above it, and I didn't want to start there. So we wrote this sketch where I was a police officer and
Yes.
you were
I was just like a driver.
you were
Just
just a
like
driver, and I pulled you over and I was interrogating you. And the joke was that I was interrogating you, a random Black man, about another crime that had happened that was totally unrelated to you.
and
Do you remember that?
I do. And like Fran, we guys, we wrote this sketch, and when Fran and I were writing it, we couldn't get through it because we thought it was so fucking
We were
funny.
we were dying. Like I was the cop, and I was like, yeah, yeah. And why did he rob the bank? And you're like, I
I'm
don't
like,
fucking
sir, I
know.
don't even know who you're talking about.
Who were you
What?
talking to? I'm like, his name was Jim. And you're like, I don't know a Jim. We just thought it was hilarious. I mean, whatever. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was
Right.
very funny to us in the moment because it was
Yeah.
really speaking to this common experience that we were having as the few Black people on campus, where people
Right.
were asking us to speak for other Black people, or they were confusing us with other Black people.
All the
And
time.
we just thought it was really, really funny.
Well,
So,
and also like zooming out to like, I mean, giving us our 18-year-old selves credit, right? Or 19. We zoomed out and we're like, oh, but racial profile, this is the racial profiling in terms of police happens all the time. And it
mhm,
happens to us on a daily basis in it,
yeah.
like on microaggressions, dare I say, in smaller ways. And we just tethered the two together. But the our fellow compatriots who we performed it for, like we would go away, write a sketch, and like come back and bring it to the whole company of people. Crickets.
Oh yeah, no,
Nobody thought it was funny.
we could barely get through the performance because we were laughing so hard. And then we did the sketch, and then no one said anything. Everyone was silent. And I will never forget, because this ended up in Shit White Girls Say. There was a white girl in the audience who is Jewish, and she said, the Jews were slaves too. And
Unbelievable.
we were like, what the fuck does that have to do with this sketch about like
Mm.
racial profile? It was so funny, and it was just so awkward, and it really bonded us together because we could not believe that the response was so, I mean, people were really offended. They really didn't like the sketch.
They were. And what's funny is that, like, I think it bonded us because, again, it was that experience that we'd had
Mhm.
our whole lives where we were like unable to say the thing. We finally said the thing that we think and feel and experience. And people
Yeah.
were like, no,
They were like, do the
oh,
other funny Black
yeah,
stuff,
all
not
right.
that.
Oh, right, right, right. Do the thing where you actually are representative of Black people. Please be a stereotype. We're really, really comfortable with that.
Um,
Um,
but you know what? That it was so funny because when I got cast in that show, I'm curious how you felt. I was a little disappointed at first because I was like, it's not a real show. Like I was like, what did I get cast in? Like there's no script, there was no title, there was no theme. And I was like, wait, we're writing the show? I was so confused. And then it ended up being this really beautiful, weird, experimental thing. And I remember I wrote a piece about my boobs being lopsided, and I
mhm.
was really like insecure about it. And then I wrote this thing, and everybody laughed and everybody loved it. And people were coming up to me afterwards and they were like, I have a little boob too. And like we were hugging. And I was like, wow, like writing is really powerful. Like this is like a whole new world, you know?
And storytelling too, like
Yeah.
being vulnerable enough to tell that, right?
Hmm.
People, what is it, what specific is universal, right? Telling that
Ooh.
story allows other women, people to say, oh my god, me too, thank you for saying something, I feel less alone again.
Yeah, I hadn't had that as an actor. How were you feeling when you got cast on that show?
Same. I literally was like, oh, what is this? And I
Mhm.
also just didn't know, I didn't have the agency I have now to say, hey, I have an idea, hey, I have a an opinion, a thought. So I was kind of nervous, but not dissimilar to yourself. I found out through our work together and the show that I was like, oh shit, no, I can say something. I do have something to say. And again, I feel seen with you, and the idea that like my experience is valuable because other people have it. It gave me a lot. Yeah, I dug it. I dug it by the end of it, and I really now like that kind of work. I love
Yeah.
rehearsal more than I do performance, actually.
Yeah, the rehearsal process was really cool. We wrote so many things that didn't even end up in the show, but just the
Hmm.
process of writing and learning how to give each other notes and feedback and like punching up, like it was a really incredible experience. Sophomore year, I was also in the Nutcracker, which we did we did the play version of the ballet, which like whatever, and I was
Wait,
the
but
rat queen.
tell the kids about your costume then.
Oh my God. I was so fucking pissed. Like, so I get cast as the rat queen, and then I have this giant three-headed mouse head. So you can't even see my face.
Mm-mm.
And the microphone was through like a weird voice box. So I was like, yeah, like I couldn't even hear that it was me. And my poor mother, my mother was a great sport. Like she came up to see me, but she was very much like, so
What are we paying for?
what are we what are we paying for? um and I think that that combined with, I lost my scholarship. I had a scholarship my freshman year, and then
Mm,
sophomore year, I don't know if you remember that all the faculty voted who was going to get the scholarship. It was not need based. It was the
mm.
faculty said, here's who we're going to vote for, and I didn't get the scholarship. And so I was working a job on campus, and then I was in the show, and I was like, oh my God, like After Fashion was awesome, but then I did, Nutcracker, and I was just like, and we also did Goodnight Desdemona. Were you in that too?
Oh God, I was in that. It was such what a terrible show. Well, I'm sorry for the writer and whoever directed that, but it was just a terrible show.
I was truly feeling like, what am I doing here? This is really expensive. And I got a job at the School of Public Health uploading documents to their website. I had a little bit of HTML background from like middle school. I was getting paid like 20 bucks an hour. And I was like, yo, this is it.
So
I was like, yo, I'm rich, bitch. So I decided I was gonna change majors to graphic design, but there was no graphic design program at Michigan.
there really wasn't?
No, there really wasn't.
Wow.
They had like an art program, but nothing. I mean, again, this was 2003. It was still, what I really wanted to do was do web design.
Hmm.
There was no web design program. And I was Googling, the closest I found was graphic design. There was no graphic design. And so I found the Art Institute in Miami, and they didn't even have a web program. It was a graphic
Really?
design program. Yeah. And I
Wow.
was like, well, I have Photoshop, I know how to draw, and there was some like web stuff, but there was no web major. Um, and so I decided that I was going to leave and move back to Florida. And, it was kind of like shocking that I was like, I'm leaving.
Tell me about like, and I feel like it was shocking, Fran. It felt like it came out of nowhere because you didn't really mention it to anybody until you were like, literally. I remember you like hopping out of a car to hug me goodbye,
Oh.
and I was like, oh God, okay, great. And you were like, but we'll very very Fran. You're like, oh no, but we'll talk. It's okay. And I was like, wait, what? You're leaving? Yeah. I
Did
was.
you did you think that we would stay in touch? Because to your point, when you sign the yearbook, and what's that
Mm.
lady's name? Cinnamon Toast Crunch, when it's like, we all go one,
Not cinnamon
we
toast crunch.
together.
I mean,
What was her name? What was
vitamin
her name?
C. Wait, it's not better than cinnamon toast crunch. It's
Oh,
vitamin C.
vitamin C. Sorry. Sorry to that
No.
woman.
Sorry that woman. Sorry to this man. I don't know.
I didn't know,
uh,
but when we go on all together.
uh,
So you sign the yearbook and you're like TTYL, and then you fucking never talk to that person again. You
oh
never
my
see them
God.
again.
You don't. I
Did you think
honestly.
that was going to happen to us?
Totally. Well, not that I didn't think that we would stay in touch, like I thought we'd stay in touch, but like I just didn't I don't know. I didn't have anything beyond like high school to gauge at that point to say like, oh, I have these lifelong friends, and I felt like I just found you. You know, I
Yeah.
just like found somebody that, oh God, it'll get me crying, right? I just found somebody that like I felt seen by, and like and I connected with, and I come out of my shell so much
Yeah.
because of that show and that experience with you, that the idea that like, you know, you were going to be gone was heartbreaking, and the way you did it, you're like, peace out, bye. But also like I back to that thing about the agency you had at that age, right? Like the idea that like you can make such a monumental decision and be like, hey, yo, this isn't right for me, I'm going, you know. And what a success it was, and like made the right decision for yourself, you know. But I didn't have that then, you know.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because I just didn't think of it that way. But to your earlier point about like, even when I've been at my most insecure, and maybe this is like the only child in me, and maybe this is Lerna Ramsey, my mother, but like, I'm not gonna do anything I don't want to do. No,
Listen,
I'm not doing this.
I know she
Mm-mm.
won't. I know.
The answer is no. Survey says no. Like I just was like, this is not it. I don't like this anymore. I feel like there's just better use of my time. And so I decided to leave.
I will also say one last thing about your leaving. You know, I said this to you before, but if it wasn't for you really doing the legwork of like calling and I mean
And
coming to
surprising, I
visit,
came up to see one of
guys,
your
oh
shows.
God, here
Yeah.
it goes. She came up, oh God, here it goes. She like surprised me my senior year, and nobody, like my family, didn't come to my shows, you know.
Yeah.
And so it just meant so much to me that you continue to do that, you know. You like showed
Yeah.
up for my last Broadway show, like and that just means so much. Like,
No.
God, here I go.
No, I
You
no, I
fucking you paid for I had no money, and like you would pay for me to come see you in Miami all the time, right?
yeah.
Like you really did the legwork to make sure that like our friendship, you know.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Well, I mean, I did it because like to your point about feeling seen, like I had never connected with somebody the way that I connected with you. And I just knew, even though I was like, bye, I'm leaving, I knew I was like, oh, we're absolutely going to stay friends. We're absolutely
Yeah.
going to stay friends. I will call you, I will text you, I'll come and visit, you'll come and visit. Um, and even like now, here we are 20 years later. I knew when we worked together on that show, I was like, this is a special relationship that I don't want to get rid of. And I don't know when we'll work together again, but I know we will. And
Mm.
so, like, it's this beautiful full circle moment to talk about how our friendship was formed in acting school, and to now have a podcast where we're talking about like acting school and how we could make it better and what we learned from the
And our
experience.
origins, right, right.
Yeah. So you stayed at Michigan.
I did.
What was the rest of the program like? It sounds like, you had the similar experience that I did, where at first you were like, what are we doing? But then it started to click for you.
It really did. Some of it did. The acting class started to click, but I think the best thing that I got from the whole experience was the voice and speech stuff.
Mhm.
That really showed me how important that is, not only in theatrical performance, but just and go on to sing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I the clown class our senior year, that was really amazing. Challenged like I've never been challenged in my life. I stay to this day. My time at Michigan was obviously so formative, but the best 4 years up to that point in my life, just the agency and like developing and growing, but also finding the I guess the second layer of theater, right? It was fun, I
Mm.
enjoyed it, and I wanted to continue doing it, and that's how I got into it. But then I found like the craft of it, and I found why it's important, and I found that being how important storytelling is to our culture, don't get me
Yeah.
started, and society, and how I think theater, TV, and film, if it tries, if it attempts to, it can really move a social dial, it can really ask questions of society, and that's kind of what the latter half of it taught me. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
And
interesting. And I, again, like one of the things I love about our friendship is I feel like we're continuously learning things about each other, even though I know you so innately. I
mm,
don't think I'd ever really heard you put into words what theater training unlocked for you about the process of acting.
right. And then I moved to New York.
And then you were like, "I hate this."
And then I literally was like, I hate this, and I ran away. I was here for 6 months and I ran away. Went to grad school because I thought, I'll eventually want to teach, because that was drilled into my head by my high school theater professor, teacher. And then I went to grad school and floundered because musical theater, despite my thinking that it's similar, it is different. It's a
Yeah.
different training. Um, Grad school, that's a whole nother podcast. I would
Yeah.
give that back
But you
if I
know what?
could get rid of those
I
loans.
Your grad school experience was so similar to my experience going to school for graphic
Mm,
design because, you were top dog actor and then you went to grad school for musical theater and I remember us being on the phone and you were like, "Fran, I hate this. Like the
terrible.
singing is killing me, the dancing, my whole body hurts. This is really hard." I had the same experience in design school where I was so creative and I was like, I know how to use Photoshop. And then I got to school and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I
And
remember like a first class, you got like a really bad grade and you
yeah,
were
I think I got
shocked.
like a D and I was like, what did I do? I was like, I think I made a huge mistake. And all of my tricks that I was so used to employing, like being funny and taking up space, like
Mm.
none of that worked in design school. Everyone was like very quiet and studious. And they were like, what is that girl doing? I was like, yeah, like dancing around.
And everyone's like at their computer quietly working.
Everyone's like, what is wrong with that girl? Yeah, none of it worked for me. And it really took me time to get my footing. But I will say that that's where you and I are really similar is we don't back down from a challenge. We're like, this
Yes.
is hard, but that's why I'm going to keep doing it and I'm going to push through. And so I'm really glad that I did. And obviously it paid off for both of us, right? You went on to be on Broadway and, you know, um,
Yes.
tour with all these different shows and counsel students on their journey to get into acting programs. I mean, obviously we're doing well for ourselves.
No, we're killing it. And I think it is a testament to the people we are. And when again, I'll say one of the things I love about you is when you were in graphic design school, you were still performing. You were still
I was doing
doing
stand
things.
up and making YouTube videos.
And you were like one of the first people I knew to make a YouTube video. You were sending me like impressions of you doing Tyra Banks. I was like, Fran, what the fuck is this video? Like, what is this? Fast forward, and she's like, a social celebrity, social
That's so
media
funny.
celebrity.
Yeah, no, everybody was like, "What are you doing?" It was such a weird time to now look back on because I was like, "This is where it's at. This is what's going on." And now here we are, and everybody's making social media content.
Right.
So, before we move on to our fix segment, my question for you is, did you think that acting school prepared you for the reality of being a working actor? And was it worth it?
Um, yes and no. There are definitely things that I wish had happened. I wish that I could have studied abroad. Actually,
Mm,
if I could go back and we had money when growing up, I would actually love to like take a year off and
mm.
just experience some stuff. I would have double majored. I love languages. I think I would have been a double majored in Spanish or a couple of languages. So I just don't think that I think I like jumped the gun and just went for this thing. I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine for it. But it also did give me a really solid training. I learned stuff. I mean, I'm looking at my theater books here right now, half of which are from my experience at Michigan. So I learned a lot and I'm a better actor for it. But
Mm,
I think I would change like small things.
okay.
But I wouldn't characterize it you giving up on it, but you were like, I've done this. This is not for me.
Yeah, and here's the thing, even though I left acting school, I did get a lot out of it, and I mean, not for me to start crying, but I felt like you were the thing that I got out of it. I was
Mm.
like, "I'm good." I was like, "I got my man, I'm out." But I did get some great friendships. I'm still friends with a number of people from our class. Um, and I think it also expanded my worldview. Like I met so many different people.
Mm.
Um, and to your earlier point about like seeing so many Black people on campus, like I really felt like I got in touch with who I am as a Black person at
Talk about
Michigan.
it. Hmm.
I got to be surrounded by so many different kinds of Black people, like people from the continent, people,
Yes.
from Europe, and I was like, a Black person with a British accent, what is that? Like,
I'm totally though. Same cultural shock in a
I was
weird
like,
way, right?
You're Black. And they were like, no, I'm not. I'm, whatever. And like, it was really an expansive experience for me. But the whole purpose of this episode and this show is to talk about where we could kind of, punch up, make things a little bit better. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will jump into the fix. And now we're back. So now that we've unpacked what acting school was like, it's time to fix it. Delon, why don't you go first?
Great. So I think via After a Fashion as the great example of writing. And to your point about having a very diverse, a more diverse I guess education as an
Mm-hmm.
artist, I would love for the program to not only have had us do, work in the costume shop and work in the prop shop and scenic and lighting and all those things to give us a well-rounded education theatrically. I would have loved for us to be like, hey, here's a writing course, not like
Mm,
academic writing, but here's like a creative writing course, and you could major in playwriting and you could dabble in playwriting, but we were such a conservatory within a liberal arts setting, so our program was set,
yeah,
so I would love a little bit more of an opportunity to kind of make it a la carte and
yeah.
design the experience you want to have a little bit more. I would love way more of a focus on consuming art,
Mm,
consuming film, consuming TV, consuming theater. Like we saw shows at our school, but I didn't feel like now I want to see stuff because I want to learn. I want to see stuff
right.
because I want to have the cultural currency or cachet, and I didn't do enough of that. Um uh I think one of the other things I would say, I guess the last thing is I've learned a lot as a teacher about acting. I've learned
Mm,
so much about how to act by teaching it, how to explain it, how to access emotions, how to explain the human experience, like human behavior, which is a huge part of acting. And I wish that I had more, maybe obviously at latter half of my tenure at Michigan, I wish I had an opportunity to teach a little bit more. Um,
mm.
yeah. What
Almost
about
kind of
you?
like being like almost like a teacher's assistant, but for acting.
1000%. There's
Oh,
also the practical things. Could someone have taught us taxes?
Oh,
How to
listen,
do our
that was going
taxes
to
as an
be my
artist?
first. That was going to be my first one. Is like the actual business of being an actor is
Yes.
something that I really wish. And again, I didn't finish acting school, but I know because of you and other friends that have studied acting. Talk to us about filing your taxes, keeping your receipts, keeping all
Mm,
your shit organized, what you can write off, right? Like as an
yes.
actor, you can write off going to the gym, you can write off getting your hair cut. You can write off going and buying your makeup for your auditions. Like, that's all stuff that would have been really helpful. And then also, like, the power of marketing and branding and networking. Like, that's all stuff that I learned post college when I worked for the city of Miami Beach. Just the importance of staying in touch with people, following up, staying
Yes.
top of mind. And maybe that's not a full class, but like that could have been a workshop or a seminar and just talking about the importance of, and not because you want to get something out of it, right? Like
Right.
we're not
Right.
staying friends because I think you're going to cast me in something. But when you look at the Ben Afflecks and the Matt Damons of the world, like staying in touch is how people continue to work. Like
Building your
I
network. It's just building your network.
and they really and I think the thing that bothered me in hindsight, and while I was there, I was struggling with this, is it was so competitive. And we weren't talking about the realities of when you are out in the real world, Francesca is not going to be playing the fucking rat queen.
Ready?
These are we are all fighting for these roles that we're never going to play. You are going to play the sister, you're going to play the mom, you're going to play the
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so we should not be seeing each other as competition. We should be working together so that when we get out of acting school, we can, network and write shows and make sketches and put each other in things. And it was very much like us versus each other the entire
Yeah.
time. And I really didn't like that. Um, Another thing that I'm thinking about a lot these days at the current state of our industry, self tapes. How to do
Ugh,
a self tape at home, how to get your lighting together, how to frame yourself, like how to do like a little bit of a quick little edit, just like a lot of the
right.
practical, tangible shit. And then one thing that I think would have been really huge is something around mental health, body image, burnout.
Mm,
I mean, you and I talk about this all the time. This career is a marathon, not a sprint.
talk about it.
And we know so many talented people that just got burnt out by this industry. And nobody talked to us about the realities of you get out here and it's a lot of no's. And it's a
Hmm.
lot of people telling you, yeah, I remember I was at a casting one time and the casting guy told me, "You're very pretty, but your teeth or your gums are too big and you should fix that. You should work on that."
Oh my
And I
God.
remember being like really upset about it. And I started thinking like, should I get surgery to like fix my mouth? Like, and remember at our school, we had like a big problem with like eating disorders. There were
Man, you and I basically had
I
one
mean,
freshman year.
we were we were we
Eating
were eating
tuna,
tuna and
like
drinking protein shakes.
literally, and like working out twice a day and like crazy.
But it was almost encouraged. Nobody
Yeah.
talked to us about like taking care of your body and exercising and prioritizing your eating habits. And then you get out into the industry and you're getting all of these messages about what your body should look like and who's booking and who's not. And you're having to watch people that you grew up with or went to school with, they're succeeding and you're not. And it starts really messing with your head.
Yeah.
And I wish that that had been an open conversation, like the realities of this industry will beat you down. And if you don't know who you are, this is not the place for you.
Well, and you're so right. And I think, what their fucked up version of that was, if you can think of anything else you can do with your life, go do that because this
Mm.
is hard. Like neck, like
Yeah.
it was very not only pejorative, but it was and like a warning, but it was jaded and so
Yeah.
cynical because all of our professors were
Mm,
former people who went to theater school who
mm.
were now professors and not
That's the
performing
real
professionally.
tea.
Right.
Yeah. And you're so right. It was definitely said in a way of like, we were fucking around at rehearsal and people were being silly. And then it was like, you know what? If you don't want to be here, when it was not said in a way of like, love the craft and like, you're going to have to really put in a lot of work before you get somewhere. It was kind of like, you're fucking around right now. So obviously you don't want to act. So you should go do something else.
Right, right. And I mean, how about just we were 18? How about we were like our brains weren't fully fucking developed? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. How about Goodnight Desdemona ain't fucking engaging enough for me to want to
Oh
pay
my, I mean,
attention?
I fell asleep and I was on stage, okay? Um so now to segue to I think our favorite segment, the glow up, where we give props to those who have turned themselves around without Francesca and I. Fran, let's hear
Mhm.
yours first. What do you got?
My glow up this week goes to Miss Katherine Heigl.
Hmm.
Um, as you might remember, in the 2000s, Catherine was popping. She was in Grey's Anatomy. She was in Knocked Up with Seth Rogen. She was in 27 Dresses. She was like, the hot it girl of the moment.
Just like
And
the
then
new
she
Sandra Bullock for a while.
she really was that girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was dubbed one of Hollywood's most difficult actresses after she did an interview with Vanity Fair in 2008, where she criticized her role in Knocked Up. She said that the film was a little sexist in its portrayal of women, which it's so funny. When I was doing this research, I was like, she wasn't wrong though.
No, at all, at all.
Like, let's just look at the pairing of Seth Rogen and Katherine Heigl
Mm,
in what world, right? Like this beautiful woman with this like schlubby guy, which is the thing that we always see.
mm-hmm.
And she was being honest about the fact that her character was really painted as this like harpy, naggy, uptight versus like the lovable goofball. Whereas, like in the movie, she had every right to be uptight. Like, homegirl got pregnant, and she was like, "My life is ruined." And Seth Rogen was like,
Right.
"No, it's not. This is great."
Let's be together.
Yeah, like let's live together. Like, it was a comedy, right? But she was
Right.
allowed to say that, but it really had people turning against her. And then Seth Rogen and Judd Apatow, who wrote the film, went on Howard Stern, ironically, of all
Mm,
places, and they were really just like, we just can't believe that she said that. They really kind of fed in this narrative of, well, we were always really nice to her and like the movie was great. How could she say it was sexist? Like, we can't just, they were the damsels in distress in that situation.
mm.
And then the same year, Katherine Heigl withdrew herself from her Emmy consideration for Grey's Anatomy. And this is where she really fucked up. Homegirl came out and was like, "Yeah, I just feel like the writing was really bad this season, so I am just not gonna submit for an Emmy." She had already won an Emmy for the show, and she was like, I already got one. This writing wasn't really that good." And
Wow.
Shonda Rhimes was rightfully pissed off about it. And Catherine left the show in 2010. And it really hurt her career. People
Mm,
did not want to work with her. She did little bit parts here and there, but her star was not as high as it was after she had been on Grey's and won all these Emmys. And she's since walked back to those comments and said that she was, naive and on her high horse. But now she is the exec producer and star of a show on Netflix called Firefly Lane, and it is a very well reviewed and respected show. She
okay.
just did the Actors on Actors for Variety with her former Grey's co-star Ellen Pompeo, and she's kind of having this renaissance moment where folks are talking about the fact that she was unfairly maligned just because she had the nerve to say, the role was sexist, and it wasn't like a diss. It was just her honest feeling. Lots of people come out and say, like, yeah, I did that movie and it sucked, but
Yeah.
they really got on her ass. And I will say the Grey's Anatomy comment was not smart, but like the fact that dudes can literally like rape people, everyone's like,
And
but
still have their careers.
he's such a good actor though.
He's a great Louis C.K. I mean, is he gonna be out of here forever?
I mean,
Forever,
listen,
guys.
he showed some women his dick without their consent, but he's funny. Like, it's just the double standard is bonkers,
It's
but she's obviously very talented. And I don't know. I think it's really cool that despite that, she didn't give up. She stayed in the industry. And now she's kind of having her glow up moment. And lots of people are enjoying the show. And she was smart to get that executive producer check. She said, "You're not going to
okay.
write me out my own show."
Fran knows well. I will say this. I mean, two things can be true at the same time, right? She definitely was on her high horse and
Yes.
believing that her shit didn't stink. Her star
Hmm.
was very bright. So there's a way to like say the things she said and like, to not pull yourself out of the Emmy nominate, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
to
that
be a
was
little bit
weird.
more diplomatic, a little bit more like, well, here's my opinion, but she just was like, here's my opinion. And I don't care. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like, why is it that that happens to so many fucking women?
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't let
Sinead
her be a black woman.
O'Connor.
She wouldn't have a glow up at all.
Listen, I mean, we have an episode coming about Eartha Kitt. Same thing happened to Eartha, right?
Hmm.
Stay tuned, friends. But it was like she said one thing and like could not work, was
Yeah.
blacklisted,
Yeah.
It happens to Sinead O'Connor, like I said, RIP,
Yes.
but like she made a political statement for a very justified reason, and everyone cut her
Turned
out,
on her. Yeah.
turned on her. It happens to women so much.
The industry is truly so fickle, and kind of related to our topic of acting school. Just the resolve that you need to say, I'm going to push through, is something you really have to be delusional. You have to be like, you got to be delulu to say, I'm going to
uh-uh.
keep going. I'm going to keep
Yeah.
going. People don't like me. I'm not booking. It's not working for me, but my time is coming. And shout out to Katherine Heigl. It obviously paid off for her. What is your glow up this week?
Well, you know me, I'm always talking about some news. Uh, my glow up is organized labor. Like, I know we are
Ooh,
a country that supports organized labor, not big business, right?
right.
Not the Fortune 500, but support for unions went up after the pandemic. So it was like 65% just among the public, and it went up to 71%. And aside from our very clear bias of, the Writers Guild, the WGA, and
Mhm.
SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Union, both being on strike this year, um, please support us, everyone. The employees from a Starbucks location in Buffalo, they were the first Starbies to ever unionize back in
Oh, wow.
2021.
Yeah,
And now, since Buffalo, 280 of the 9,300 corporate locations have unionized.
that's
So, like,
incredible.
it's insane. In April of 2022, an Amazon warehouse in Staten Island won a bid to unionize, the first for Amazon. They are still the only certified union of Amazon employees in the US. And then there was another one, another warehouse in Coventry, England, that attempted to unionize. Now, Amazon is fighting both of these, but it's just chipping away at it, right?
Yeah.
UPS just averted a walkout with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. One of the big things, it sounds so small, but one of the big things on the table in that negotiation was just getting part-time employees a $5 raise from
Lord.
$16 to
Like,
$21,
not
which,
even a ton of money, but at the same time, that's life changing.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And let's just be frank, like the wealth disparity in this country and in the world is just so stark and ridiculous that the only way the bottom 90%, 98% of us can sustain a middle class life is to take it to these billionaires who have for some reason feel entitled to be billionaires.
Yeah.
Thank you, capitalism. I mean, do you need billions of dollars?
Really.
And the only thing we can do is just say, you know what, it's not working for us, and so we need to renegotiate.
Yeah, this is a really great one because I definitely think the perception of unions is changing because there are a lot of people who've been seeing the strikes, whether it be the Writers Guild or SAG or the potential strike with UPS. And there have been people that are like, oh, why do they think they need something? And other folks are turning around and saying, why don't you deserve more? Why don't
Thank you.
what's going on with you? Why aren't you standing up? Why aren't you on strike? And it seems like it's starting to raise class consciousness with people that have always had that crabs in a barrel mentality, and now they're like, yo, we need to stand up, we
It's
need to
time, man.
let's
It's
go.
time to stop talking about the wealth disparity and actually, like, what are the action steps?
Hmm.
Because, people have kids, people have bills. It's We can't sustain this. And I think also, personal note, not that I received one because I was in a different tax bracket, was being the operative word, but when the pandemic, came down and the US government was just like,
Mm.
checks, everybody get a check.
So they
You get a
could do
check. That
so you could have done this a long time ago.
This is what's mind-boggling to me. I'm like, y'all gave people 2,000, everyone $2,000 checks multiple times, and
Hmm.
then you're out here talking about we're cutting Medicaid. There's too much welfare. There's too much of this. There's too much of that. No, y'all just sitting on cash and saying no to people when people
Yeah.
are out here struggling.
Yeah, I mean, it is a weird time and it's a stressful time, but to your point about, unions and collective bargaining having a moment, my hope is that this is going to mobilize people for the better and make people say like, wait a second, when we come together and stand up, it actually works. So why not do more of that? I mean, it's a really powerful thing, and at the end of the day, nobody got their rights by asking nicely.
Talk about it.
Can I have some more? Can I have some more rights?
Get out here,
That's not
Oliver
how it works.
Twist. Talk about a full circle moment.
That's not how it happens. You gotta
Right.
fucking stand up and demand that shit.
For real.
All right, friends, we would like to hear from you as we're wrapping up the show. We realize that you probably did not go to acting school, but we still want to know, were there any fixes that really spoke to you? And what about your college experience? Is there anything that you would change? Please let us know.
Or maybe you'd like to suggest a TV show, celeb, or brand we could fix on a future episode, please let us know. Hit us up on Instagram at FixItPod.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to give us a rating on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening. I'm Francesca,
I'm Delon.
and this was Let Me Fix It.